Hello, hello, good afternoon. It's Monica from Life is Art, and this is the Saturday 3:30 p.m. live at the Berry Sweet Craft Party online crop. And we just finished having a really fun afternoon of chatting and crafting. We'll be having another session this evening. So if you feel like joining us for that, please do so. Everyone is welcome. And we are going to be doing some scrapbooking. We are going to be looking at one of the new designer series paper called Homemade Sweetness, and it's 12 by 12 pattern paper. And we're going to be also incorporating something I was super excited about in the newest online exclusives that just landed is the Simple Alphabet stamp set. So we're going to be using that on our layout, and also the Filled with Sweetness stamp set. We're going to use a little something from that as well. So let's get started with our base page. We're going to be using a 12 by 12 piece of the crushed curry, and we're going to be using the light side of crushed curry for our layout. I'm just going to line it up on my mat and hopefully it stays put while we're crafting. If you're joining me live, just say hello or howdy so I know you're here. If you're watching later on replay, drop a comment so I know you stopped by. I see that Ellie is here and Mary is here as well. And so welcome, welcome. We're going to begin by bringing in a strip of designer series paper that has all sorts of gorgeous fruits on it. There's peaches and strawberries and blueberries and blackberries or raspberries and strawberries. Did I say strawberries? And cherries and citrus and lots of fun things. In fact, that almost looks like grapefruit from the coloring. So lots of fun things on there. I've cut this to 10 inches by 1 3/4. I'm going to put some adhesive on the back of this. I can find the end. And that's going to be what anchors everything else that we're going to build on this page. So we want to make sure this one goes in the right spot, and then everything else should just fall into place magically. What do you think? Is it going to happen? Hey, Mom, nice to see you're watching. I see Heather's here too, and Brenda and Diane. Good afternoon, good afternoon. I don't know if I missed anybody. Nope, I think that was everybody. So this piece is going to get adhered 1 inch in from each side and about 1 3/4 inches up from the bottom. Sorry, 3 3/4, not 1 3/4. 3 3/4? No, that's wrong. Let me see. I wrote it down. Let me see where it lands. Yes, 2 inches up. 2 inches up. Oh my gosh. 2 inches up, 1 inch in from each side, and we're going to stick that on. I went ahead and said we were anchoring our page on this. I better get it in the right spot. This is the strip that's going to be 3 3/4 up, and that is a strip of the same paper, but the back side. So it's got this sort of almost like sponge painted texture to it, and it's in the nice misty moonlight coloration, which of course you know me in blues. We love our blues, and it's the same color that you see there in the blueberries. So this piece is a 12 inch by 3/4 inch piece, and it's going to be 3 3/4 inches from the bottom of the page, just lined up there like that. And now we've got our measurements correct. Hooray! Then we're going to add in another piece from that same collection, the Homemade Sweetness. I love this blue check. I like that it's a diagonal check instead of square. The opposite side are these teeny tiny little ladybugs and flowers, which are super cute. But we're going to be using the opposite side with the check. And this has been cut to 11 inches by Let me just double check. Yes, 11 by 2. I thought that was right, but you know me, I don't trust my memory. So 11 inches by 2. And this is going to build on top of this. So it's going to come to 1/2 inch in from the ends and just stacking on top. I like how we're getting different lengths of our pattern paper going along here. That creates kind of a really fun look. And then our next piece, because we've got a lot of patterns going on, our next piece is going to be yet another pattern. But what I have done was originally I had cut a larger piece of this designer series paper, and then I thought, you know what, that's just kind of wasteful. So this is the same, you can see, continuation of this piece. Actually, I hadn't cut it. I had envisioned cutting it a bigger size. But then when I kind of figured out what I was doing, I decided not to. So this one is, of course, the 10 inches wide, but it's 2 1/4 inches tall. And so instead of having this large piece that runs underneath the other 2 strips, I decided we would just take the pieces that we need that were exposed and conserve our paper. So again, we're coming 1 inch in from either side and stacking it right on top. And so if you want to use a whole piece, you can. I would totally allow it, and you can just do the math to figure that out. But I decided to save the paper because I want to make more things with it. Hey Barb, good afternoon. Now next we have a solid piece of cardstock. This is Calypso Coral, and it's the dark side. And that's kind of the color that you see here that looks sort of like the grapefruity color. So this is Calypso Coral. It has been cut to 5 by 4. And again, this was a piece that could have probably been cut bigger, but I decided we didn't need to cut it any bigger. Look at me making all these decisions. Because it's going to get kind of tucked in behind things. So we went with 5 by 4, and I wrote down that it's going to be 3 inches in from the right-hand side, and it's going to be 2 1/4 inches down, which basically places it sitting right, did I say 2 1/4? That's not right. 2 1/4 would be very low, and I don't think that's where it was going. It was going to sit right on top of there, but it needs to be 3 inches in. So we're not going to worry about what the height is. We just know it's going on top of that little check. Okay, I think that's just because I had a bigger piece before. In my brain, in my thoughts. Then we're bringing in a piece of the Misty Moonlight. So we're picking up on our plaid and on our designer series paper that's kind of modeled. And so this one is a 5 by 7. And no, we're not putting a 5 by 7 full photo on here. Although we could, but we're not. We're just going to put a 5 by 7 piece of cardstock. We're kind of making a whole bunch of seemingly looking layers. And it's going to kind of create a fun thing. And this was actually a template. Kind of like what I do for Sketchy Saturday, but it was a template that was posted on Pinterest as part of a group of a whole bunch of templates by a lady named Connie Prince, and I thought it was kind of an interesting one, a little bit asymmetrical, a little bit layered, and I kind of like the look of it, so I've had it in my list of things, and decided I would go ahead and try it. So this one's going to come 2 1/4 inches in, and 2 1/4 inches down, and line up somewhere around there. Well, looks all right. And we're going to stick that down, our 5 by 7. And then we have some photos. And I need to tell you a little story. So during COVID, we had Mother's Day. And because we couldn't go anywhere and we couldn't do anything and whatnot, my family decided we would have a little staycation. A little make-believe staycation, and we were going to be staycationing at the Aberdeenia Archipelago, and they made signs and decorations. Well, Julia made decorations. They made a lei for me to wear. Actually, Julia made a lei for me to wear. Basically just assume all the decorations were Julia's doing. And then Justin was in charge of drinks and foods and things. And Sean and Joshua were in charge of games and taking photos and all that kind of stuff. So it was a whole, and I think we kind of celebrated for the whole weekend. But Mother's Day was kind of the highlight. So we were having breakfast here at our Aberdeenia archipelago. And so we had tater tots and scrambled eggs. But we had blackberry, strawberry daiquiris, then they're no alcohol involved, but icy drinks with our breakfast. And so that's a photo of Julia and I with our icy drinks and our breakfast. And then throughout the day, it was kind of a tropical theme. Throughout the day, we had various fancy drinks, lime things and pineapple things, and there was candied pineapple, and there was coconut things, and there was coconut cookies, and it was a whole day-long affair with all sorts of treats and things. So I felt very spoiled on Mother's Day during COVID when I couldn't go anywhere, and so that was very exciting. So that would have been in 2020. And so that was a few years ago, but we're finally getting around to scrapbooking this. And this photo is going to kind of come in here like this and hang out kind of about an evenish border, sort of, around there. Maybe a little more of that Calypso coral showing. So this is about a 4x6, about. And then I've done a little 1/4 of an inch larger white willow photo mat. Then I decided to get fancy. My husband bought me some sort of little tool for cutting circles, and normally I would use a die, but my dies weren't quite big enough, and so I used the little thing that goes around and cuts a circle. So I've cut a picture of me out with my blackberry, strawberry, slushy breakfast drink. And of course, I've got a little bit of a white border around that. So let's adhere those together. And I think I was aiming for about 4 inches, but it's probably a little bit less. So this is, just shy of 3 3/4. And then this is just like 3 7/8. So I was aiming for 4 inches. It was a kind of a by guess and by golly. Sometimes it's hard with a photo to get a 4-inch circle when the photo is only a 4x6 to begin with. You kind of got to play around with it to get it to work, right? So I'm going to put the adhesive on the back of this, but I'm not going to stick it down yet because I want to make sure that what I bring in next sits in the proper spot. So it's going approximately right there. But on this template, there was a single mat that had 3 2x2 photos on it. So I've got my white willow. We're doing all our mats the same color. And this one's 6.5 by 2 1/4. And then I have a close-up of my fruity breakfast drink and a close-up of my tater tots and scrambled eggs. And then I've got a close-up of a strawberry daiquiri without the blackberries in it. And so those are going to get kind of centered on that photo mat. So let's stick those down. I need to work on how to adjust my photos for tiny photos, because I think I would have preferred this photo to be a little bit less close up. But I had to work with the photo I had. And the photo I had was actually very close up to begin with, so I didn't actually crop it very much. If the photo had been taken with more background, then that would have allowed me to have a little bit more context for the photo. I'm holding it in my hand, so this is my hand here, and then the fruity drink in my hand. So let's stick that down. And then our little breakfast So have you ever had a staycation, vacation for your birthday or Mother's Day or any kind of anniversary or whatever, that was totally taken on by your family? It was quite an experience, to say the least. It's kind of nice. Usually if we went anywhere for a vacation, it was always Mom that planned how everything was going to go. Barb is liking the layering. Awesome. So this one is going to layer on top, and it's actually going to overlap that big photo just a smidge. I want to leave a little bit of an edge of that pattern paper showing. And then this is going to overlap just a smidge, just so no, it's going to go under. Just so everything kind of gets tucked in. And there we go. Now we're going to have a little notch here. That's okay. We're going to cover that up. But let's get this stuck down because we've got our adhesive on there. And then we will stick down our trio of photos. Yes, that goes under. And I'm kind of aiming for the same gap here and here. That's kind of where my eye is looking. There we go. And then this one. I love kind of the combination of colors here. It looks, kind of fun and vacation-y and fruity. And it seems to match what's going on in the photos. So we're going to stick that on there like that. And then, to do something a little bit different for my title, I decided to use that new stamp set, the Simple Alphabet. And I've got the word mothers with an apostrophe because there is punctuation in here. There's also numbers, which is nice. So I've got the word mothers lined up here. I'm going to scooch my layout out of the way and bring in a scrap piece of paper as well as a little piece of vellum. So I have a 5.5 by 1 inch piece of vellum. And you know what? I'm going to actually stamp it on here so that I can see the edge of the vellum, because when I have it on the scrap piece of paper, it's a little harder to see the edge because it's white on white. So I'm going to use my Versamark ink to ink up my word mothers all the way across. Then we're going to line it up and try to stamp it in the middle. It might not be, and it might even be crooked. There we go. And then I've got my white embossing powder here. I'm going to just pick that up, sprinkle on my white embossing powder, which I need to buy some more of. Got to put that on my list. Give it a little tap, make sure it's got good coverage. And then I can use my scrap paper to pick up that embossing powder and tip it back into my jar. Then I need to grab my heat tool and my tweezers, I think, because we're actually working pretty close to the edge of our vellum here. I like to hold my paper up off my work surface, and vellum actually heat embosses pretty fast because it's thinner than cardstock. It does kind of blow in the wind a bit. Some people like to heat it first on the back side if they're worried about the embossing powder running away with the blowing, but I find it does okay, but it does bend a bit. So I'm kind of wrapping around. There we go. It's not wrapping around because it's melting. It's wrapping around because the wind is pushing it from the tool. You can heat it on both sides. See how it flops around there? Okay. So that is our mothers, and I love how that turned out. We can then take our paper snips and do a little bit of dovetailing. I'm going to do a little finessing I'm going to trim it so that it's more in the center. And then I'm going to snip in from the end to do a little dovetail. And then snip from the corner to the top of my snip. The opposite corner to the top of my snip. Come around to the other side. Snip. Snip, snip. And the reason I decided to use the vellum for this is because we went ahead and put all of those fun patterns on there. And if we put a title on that's solid and large, like this is a pretty good size title, we're not going to see a lot of those patterns. So I thought by having it in the vellum, you can still kind of catch those things, but the heat embossing is solid enough that you still see the title, right? Hey, Laura, Sullivan is there with you too. Hi. And so we've got Mother's, and then I also did Day. And Day is actually going to come on and maybe in the center of that one. Mother's Day, or maybe a little bit off center. No, that's about centered. Okay, now the trick with sticking down vellum is that your adhesive will show through. So because we have heat embossed on it, we've got some places to hide some adhesive. I'm just doing that because the last few times I've tried to use my glue, I think it's because the glue is getting low, it has not wanted to come out, and then when it did come out, it came out too much. So I don't want to do that on the back of my vellum. So I am just going there. See, it's still doing it. It's coming out without me even asking it to. I'm just going to put a few dots in behind the letters along the word Mother's. It bounces around. And then we can use that glue to stick it down, and hopefully it won't smush too much here and there. I'm going to kind of line my vellum up with the tops of those little photos and stick it on down with my little dovetail just glancing over the end of that plaid. And then my Day, I can do the same thing. Add a few little dots. And if perchance you need more glue than that to hold your title on, you can add some what am I trying to say? You can add some embellishments, some bling, and hide some glue dots that way as well. You can also use the little micro glue dots, and then they're not going to smush. But they just need to be small enough that they can hide behind the letters, right? So if you've ever tried doing heat embossing on vellum for your title, that's a fun way to do it, because then you still see all that lovely patterns and even some of the photos showing through. I've got a scrap piece of paper from my drawer, and I'm going to stamp some little strawberries from the Filled with Sweetness stamp set. Got it loaded on my block. We're going to use some Memento ink to do this. I'm going to ink it up. And I actually want 3 of these, but I've already done some. So we're just going to make one right now. Should put the lid on my glue. And I'm just going to use 2 colors, quick and easy to color this. I'm going to use my dark Granny Apple Green and my dark Pretty in Pink, because I don't have the Calypso Coral and I don't have Strawberry Slush in a marker. I'm just going with my darkest pink that looks like it will work nice with my layout. Now, one thing I want to do is I want to leave kind of a shiny spot on my strawberry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of hit the edge there and hit the edge here. And then I'm going to jump, and I'm going to leave a little triangle, I'll show you here in a second, of a shiny spot on my strawberry. And what that's going to do is going to make it look juicy and lovely and shiny. And so you see that there's that little triangle of blank space. So when you're coloring with your markers, think about how you can leave some blank space and allow that to become a little shiny spot. All right. And these are called Stampin' Blend markers, and that means they blend. And especially on this white cardstock, which is lovely for coloring on because you get the nice crisp colors, the markers will blend. And so you don't want to color right on the line. So you just kind of go up to the line and then stop. And then you get a lovely little berry like that. And you can rough cut it and then fussy cut it because we know we love to fussy cut. I believe there are dies that you can purchase to go with the Filled with Sweetness stamp set. In fact, I know there are dies. And they've got some things in there that aren't even part of the stamp set, which is always a fun feature of getting a die set. However, I was feeling budget restrained and just went with the stamp set. If you do get a stamp and a die at the same time, there is a bit of a savings. I believe it's about 10% savings by buying them together. So you can always kind of balance that out, right? So coming in with our layout then, we've got our pretty little strawberry here, and it's going to sit here and cover up that funny little triangle. And then, of course, I had a couple others that I did up ahead of time, and they're going to kind of come over here and hang out and create a nice little spot of juicy, fruity goodness. Let's go ahead and stick these down. I might as well use my liquid glue because I got it out, if it'll cooperate. Stick a little strawberry on there. And then a couple little strawberries up here. Just kind of sitting on the top of my title. Like so. Super cute. Picking up from that design in the pattern paper below with the lovely little strawberries. And then there's some fun bling that goes with this collection. It's called Strawberries and Dots. And it's got the Misty Moonlight dots and Strawberry Slush dots and little teeny tiny strawberries. If you can see those there, they're just little teeny tiny strawberries. And I think that's super cute. I'm just going to use the dots on this page. And they're very flat. They're very much like little discs as opposed to humped up dots. They're little discs. So I think I'm going to use the blue ones on here because we love our blue. At least I do. So I'm going to add a little dot happening over here. A little dot happening over here. And then maybe another little dot right there. We can add, let's grab another one of these. And maybe put it right there on the edge of our title. And there. And one right there. Making little triangles. One more. A little set of dots. Kind of hanging out with our little strawberry down here. Just like that. There we go. And complete it. We can add some journaling, all those kinds of things, but that is our completed layout for our staycation for Mother's Day with at Aberdeenia Archipelago, using that Homemade Sweetness Designer Series paper, mixing up a large iconic type of pattern with a smaller scale pattern, and then one that's more of a texture, kind of mixing up. It's nice to have those different scales and different feels of pattern paper, but then also adding in some blocks of the color from the cardstocks and to break it up, and then adding in a lot of the white as well. Usually I use white for my base page, so today I kind of mixed up using that crushed curry in the background, a little bit of heat embossing on vellum, using our new alphabet set, and of course our little blings, which feel so cool. They feel like fuzzy rubber. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing that layout come together. I hope you feel inspired to create one like it. And if you do, snap a photo of it, pop it in the comments where I post the pictures of my layout, and then we can all see and be inspired by your artwork as well. Have a great rest of your afternoon. We will be on at 7 o'clock for Chat and Craft. Hope to see you then. Toodaloo. Bye.